think about when you're born into a fire. Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. Listen up now, because we're never dropping out. Beat the odds, beat the big house. The brains are bigger than the doubt. We've been thinking for ourselves, never let the truth fade away. This is bigger than ourselves, we won't let the world burn away, burn away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. To play, hate is base, the world's mistake. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. And we feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. To play, hate is base, the world's mistake. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. What you think about when you're born into a fire. Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. Listen up now, because we're never dropping out. Beat the odds, beat the big house. The brains are bigger than the doubt. We've been thinking for ourselves, never let the truth fade away. This is bigger than ourselves, we won't let the world burn away, burn away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. To play, hate is base, the world's mistake. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway.
Hello, friends. Welcome to our Thursday night hangout as we are here to talk some Impact Wrestling. Welcome to Making an Impact. I am the foe, Cody Defoe. Right beside me, as always, the wonderful, the amazing, the natural Astrid Pizarro. How are you tonight, Astrid?
I know I'm getting the sniffles now, but other than that, I'm okay. It feels so nice to be back to regular schedule programming. It feels weird not doing the watch along now at the same time. Um, but yeah, for those of you that missed it, we did a watch along with Multiverse United last week, to start WrestleMania weekend. That's on my YouTube channel if you haven't yet. But yeah, it was fun, but I'm glad we're back to our normal stuff. How are you?
You threw me off there with the finger talking about sniffles. I thought you were pretending to have a mustache for a second. So
No.
I'm good. It's been a good night of wrestling. Excited to get into it and talk about it. Lots of things set up for Rebellion next week. Before we jump into it, just a hello in the comments to our friends Mel Ball Collins and to the amazing video bro Bobby Munson. Thank you guys for popping in. Thanks for joining us. Join the conversation if you watched or if you have anything to input as we're talking here. Astrid, I know we both watched BTI. Let's jump into it. BTI match this week, we had Heath and Rhino taking on the Indian Lion Shera and Champagne Singh in a tag match. Apparently, we are just in a rhythm here where Champagne and Shera is our Thursday night kickoff every week right now. We get them for every BTI, it feels like. How did you feel about how we got the show started?
I was kind of hoping for a women's match, to be honest. So I was like, that was my initial thought process because I hadn't seen the graphic yet, and I saw that. I was like, I don't know how I feel about it, especially with the champagne part of it. But sure, we'll go with it. No, what I love more about this match is like how the crowd was so behind Heath and Rhino, no matter what they did, especially towards the end of the match itself. The match was like nothing really that stood out to me, so it was nothing like out of the ordinary per se. Um, I just love seeing Heath and Rhino teaming up, so that was a highlight for me at least.
Yeah, if you didn't realize, Rhino being from the Detroit area, Detroit is just across the border, basically split cities from Windsor, Ontario, where the show was taped. There was a huge contingent of Rhino fans in the crowd tonight. We had some of the loudest cheers of the night, I believe, just chanting on and cheering for Rhino. Rhino on the apron when Heath was in the ring, getting the "He's Got Kids" chants going at full volume was really fun to see.
Mhm.
Ultimately, came down to what it always comes down to. The hometown boy gets the W with the gore on Shera. I did just want to drop a quick hit to Gia on this show, though. The one spot where Heath is in the ring with Shera and Singh grabs him from the outside, and Gia,
Mhm.
without batting an eye, for as expensive as he is, that was cheap by Singh. It was a nice play on words there for Champagne Singh being the expensive guy, but being cheap in the ring.
Yeah. I like how she's improving a lot too with her wording there too. So that's pretty nice to see her doing
Yeah,
dropping
she
little lines like
feels
that.
more and more comfortable out there.
Hmm.
I was kind of confused why she was sitting at the commentary desk in like a full length fur coat tonight, but that's a story for another day. Uh, Main show gets underway, and we kick it off right away with the gut wrench as they give a recap and a little bit of a video montage of the Josh Alexander news, talking about him relinquishing the title later tonight, talking about the torn tricep, the recovery, and a nice little touch in here that they're kind of giving Kushida a little bit of a rub on this, that they're saying that the hoverboard lock from a few weeks ago may have been to blame for the tear, which is a nice little addition now to this story, that there was never really much said about what could have caused the tear or what did cause the tear, just that he tore it, as far as I heard at least. So giving Kushida the nod here and a little bit of that, making the hoverboard lock seem even more dangerous than it always is, kind of caught me in this opening segment there.
Yeah, I liked how it just feels like it adds a little bit more to that connection between Kushida and Josh in there. But also I feel like it adds to a little bit more to Kushida versus Macklin because it makes you think, how would it go about if it happened to Macklin during the match as well? Is he gonna have the same result as Josh? So I feel like it was a good hint to like add to the story here and to add to like the match itself because we don't have a lot going on for the match yet up until tonight because of the news from Josh happening out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah, we do get into that a little bit further later in the night when we actually get to Josh relinquishing the title, but we'll save that for when we get to it. Our opening match of the night, we got Motor City Machine Guns, Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley taking on the mighty Don't Kneel of Shane Haste and Big Teats, Bad Dude Tito. Didn't get a ton of notes on this match. I enjoyed it. There was a lot of tag team psychology, a lot of strong tag team work in this match, but nothing that really stood out as noteworthy or jaw-dropping or stunning or anything like that. It just was a good, clean, quality match that didn't have too many crazy spots. It didn't have any crazy moments, any turns, any interference, anything that stood out as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, I felt the same way too when I started. I was thinking of like, oh, I end up taking it a road because a Motor City Machine Guns kind of match, but I don't want to say it was some of the same old stuff, but it's like the usual kind of tag team psychology we get from them with their double team moves and things like that. They're high speed, so there's nothing like you said that was new for me to like stand out here. It was just nice to see this match happening after Multiverse United. But other than that, it's just like there was nothing like that I could say, this was cool. That was a cool spot, a cool move that they made or anything like that. I don't know how I felt about it being an opener though. I feel like maybe the high speed does help, but it makes me miss like the X Division kind of matches opening the show itself though.
Yeah. The thing I've consistently pointed out with Motor City Machine Guns since they've started teaming again and been a regular staple on the program is a lot of their matches, they seem like just the veteran tag team, that their tag team psychology and their ring tactics are just at a higher level than all of the other teams. I didn't necessarily feel that way. There was a couple spots where Matt and Tom kind of pointed out, whenever Teats and Haste tried to do a double team move, that Sabin or Shelley was there to, cut it off and interrupt it. But it didn't feel like it was in such a way that they were the better tag team. It was almost just that they were always there. So it was hard to see that because Tito and Haste didn't feel like they were a step below necessarily in their tag team tactics. And maybe I missed it. Maybe I didn't catch on to quite what Ray Wolt was trying to get at when he was talking about it, but it didn't hit in that way. It just felt like two teams that were both really quality tag teams.
Yeah, and I thought that like the like ending itself was also like nothing out of the ordinary happening there. Just like I like that aspect of having the Motor City Machine Guns block off the partners from being able to break off that pin, so they're able to win there too. But yeah, other than that, there was nothing like really that was like wow, like I'll remember that later kind of thing or anything like that. Hello, Eld. Eld, I can't talk.
Eld?
Ed.
He's our elder.
Oh, Eld.
Barry, welcome to the show.
Hello, Barry. We missed you at the watch along.
It did feel a little bit rushed for sure.
Yeah.
Like it didn't get the time that it probably could have, but we just saw these two teams in the 4-way at Multiverse too. So I think the main point of this match though was the post match backstage segment we got. As soon as the match ended, we get Motor City Machine Guns going up the ramp, and we cut to the backstage right on the other side of the curtain where Ace Austin and Chris Bay are standing, and they're there applauding and congratulating Sabin and Shelley for the win, and mention, congratulations on beating a team that we just beat a couple weeks ago. And they kind of go back and forth a little bit, both being a little cocky about that. Sabin mentions the rematch that they have for the titles that they're going to take at Rebellion, suggests if Bay and Austin are that comfortable, they do this as an Ultimate X match. Kind of came out of left field with that one for me. I don't know if I've ever seen an Ultimate X tag match. I don't know if it's ever even been done. I probably should have done my research on that one, but I'm sold. These are 4 extremely talented X Division athletes having a tag team title match in an Ultimate X match. Sounds like a fantastic thing to see live.
Yeah, the first thing I thought was like, dang, Cody, am I jealous of you watching this live? That was my thought process. Saying, what does he get the good card? Dang it. No, just thinking of like Ultimate X, these are 2 of the top teams that we have in Impact right now. And so it makes sense for something like this to happen. I cannot begin to imagine having Ace and Bay do this type of match. So you're getting a good card as it is with just this match alone. So I was automatically jealous when I heard this happening. But I think they confirmed it later on for Rebellion. So
Yeah, the Ultimate X has
you're
always
happy
been one
watching
of
for
my
you.
Ultimate X has always been one of my favorite match types in Impact. So getting to see that live for the first time is going to be something special.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I was trying to think, but I don't think I've seen that one live yet. But yeah, it's something pretty interesting to think about.
Yeah. We go from one backstage segment to another where we have Kenny King in the locker room. Thank you for checking in and clarifying
Yeah,
that.
I'm looking at it now. If I'm not mistaken, I see one for 2015. I think that's the one.
Barry giving us the stats here. Thank you, Barry.
Mhm.
Kenny King in the locker room, and Eddie comes in asking if Kenny still has his back for this match against PCO tonight. But Kenny's upset that Eddie didn't have his back at Sacrifice. He says he's got something bigger planned, that he's got somewhere else that the King is going, and says to Eddie, maybe you should get whoever it was that hit PCO with the car. And that's where I'm like, wait a second. Did we not think Kenny hit PCO with the car?
No.
So kind of sets us up for tonight that, Eddie's all alone going into this match with PCO. He doesn't have anybody else. But also that question of who really hit PCO.
Yeah. Dun dun dun. That's all I can think about when this happened. But yeah.
Yeah, not too much more out of that, I don't think, unless you have something on it, Astrid.
No, I just kept thinking it's like hopefully tonight we'll get that reveal. I just kept thinking I didn't I kept kind of in my mind thinking of the people. I couldn't think of anybody that could be it. Like when it comes to the guys, and I'm glad I was right about that because it wasn't a guy.
Ultimately, if you remember what I mentioned from when it actually happened, I think ultimately I was right on my call all along. But we go lots of backstage segments coming here. Yeah. I mean, hopefully where he ends up is better, but it really does feel like he's just bouncing around without any rhyme or reason right now. He's just going wherever the wind blows.
Yeah. Fortunately.
Next backstage segment, though, we have Scott D'Amore just getting news that Josh and his family have just arrived. And Tommy Dreamer just rolls on up and starts asking Scott to be on his team for the Hardcore War Rebellion, basically begging and telling him he saw something special in that Canadian destroyer and he wants Scott to get his revenge because he has all this history with Bully and yada, yada, yada. But Scott basically shuts him down and says, nope, my job is backstage. I've got confidence you'll find all the people you need. And just kind of moves on from there. It is what it is, I guess. I'm a little disappointed that we won't get to see Scott pull out another Canadian destroyer, but
you saw exactly what I was thinking when this was happening. I was like, dang it, another Canadian destroyer would have been nice to see. Maybe next time.
Maybe it'll be after the match. Maybe, it is a hardcore war. There's no disqualification, right?
Yeah, true.
We get to our next match of the night, which is Speedball Mike Bailey versus Jonathan Gresham, Part 3. And for this one, we were greeted at commentary by Trey Miguel before any of the entrances happen that our X Division champ is going to be sitting in because the winner of this match is getting a championship opportunity at Rebellion against Trey. Another technical masterpiece for the most part, eh?
Mm-hmm. This is another one that I didn't have any notes because I was just like, give me more of this. I love it. No, it's nice to see these two battle it out again. I know they're 1-1, so but I was not expecting it to have a winner here to go and say, look, I have one. I have the upper hand on you. I just was not expecting Trey to go in there and cost a DQ that he cost. But I like the little part especially this part when they're outside, at Gresham and Speedball, and they're really close to Trey. And he's like, no, don't put me in here. And especially when Speedball's about to do his kick, and he exactly stops right in front of inches away from Trey's. I was like, oh, that was too close. But I love having these two battle it out though, and I like having Trey get involved in it the way he did though. I feel like it was an easy way, if you want to call it like that, to to not only cause that DQ, but make sure we don't have that winner, so nobody can say, you know, I had the upper hand, and then it just builds up from there to having the triple threat at Rebellion too. So that's why I said another match I was jealous that you're seeing too. Dang it.
Yeah. No, we get, as Astrid's alluded to, Trey climbs the ropes and jumps in with a double drop kick that hits both men basically at the same point. Ref calls it off, double DQ, no contest, no winner. Trey starts acting like he's the smart one, celebrating. He's thinking he doesn't have to face either of them if nobody actually wins. Definitely, you know, not a brand new thing. It's happened other places before. It's been done, but kind of a unique way of handling and setting it up still, that Trey being Trey, he doesn't see anyone as a challenge right now. And so he's like, I don't want to face either of them. No, neither of them are a challenge to me. So let's just eliminate the competition.
Yeah.
More backstage after this segment is done. We go to an empty stairwell where we have the entirety of the design backstage. Diener starts accusing Callahan of costing them the match against Time Machine a couple weeks back. Callahan gets really frustrated and calls out Diener that he sacrificed himself for the team. He wasn't costing them the match. He was trying to save the match. I didn't take a lot of notes on what Diener said. There was a lot of fluff in here, but ultimately he's questioning Callahan's motives, questioning if he's doing it for the right reasons. But every time they put one of the 7 deadly steps in front of him, he's, passing the step and making the right choices and doing the right things. And sets the goal for him that step 7 is to prove that the design is the ultimate authority, that there is no authority above the design, and Callahan needs to eliminate all other authority in his life. When he asks what authority is that, Big Con behind Diener is just like, figure it out.
Thanks. That's all I get. Yeah, this is another one that there's not really much to it right now. I think I feel like, I don't want to say it like this, but it's the best way I can describe it. I feel like he was getting the trust, and then everything happened, and now he feel like he's a step back again to hey, are you here to destroy us? And yet again, he has to prove himself to it. I'm waiting to see what happens after that 7th step, because we always had the number 7 involved, and after that I was like, what happens when that is done? And that's my questioning going into this right now. And this is the 7th step. Let's say it happens next week or a Rebellion, whichever. What happens after that and going forward with the design and Callahan in this? It's I want to see some kind of solution to it somehow, which I don't know what that could be at this point.
Yeah, I have some theories on where this is going now, based on kind of how this played out throughout the rest of the night. I'll touch on them maybe a little bit later, but I have a theory of what we might actually get to see at Rebellion. We go from one backstage segment to another. We have Santino trying to calm down both Gresham and Bailey, who are both mad at the match being interrupted in the no contest. Trey Miguel rolls up. He's laughing and basically saying he outsmarted them, and now neither of them, if there's no winner, nobody can be champ or can be number 1 contender. Santino manages to calm the chaos down and sets up a triple threat match between them. And Trey's still laughing, like, I just beat 5 men a couple weeks ago, that this is nothing. So Santino's like, you know what? No, let's make it an elimination style. So you have to pin both of them to retain your title, unless one of them beats you first. And my favorite part of this segment is, as always, Deputy Dictator of Authority, Dirty Dango, who, after Santino makes the announcement of the match, just decides that it's his place to step in and offer his help to any of the competitors, because he has a lot of experience in 3-ways.
Dango. Always stealing the scenes. That's what he does. I'm glad this is a part. I'm glad that this was answered right away tonight, and we got that part of you think you're smarter than what we are smarter you at this point, and then we have an answer to not 1 but 2 of your moves tonight, Trey. So, Tramp, let's see what you got after this, because this will be super interesting to watch.
Yeah. Yep. I want to hear from you, Astrid, on the next match, because we have the debut of our newest knockout, Jody Threat, taking on local talent Terra Rising, not to be confused with Triple H and WCW.
I didn't like the name though.
I mean,
No,
I
I really
appreciate that it was a
didn't.
pun, but I had to look it up
Yeah.
because I remembered someone using it before, and it was Paul Levesque in WCW was Terra Rising.
Jeez. Yeah, that's the first thing when I saw the name, and I was like, especially when you put the nameplate as they did, and they put the name that they gave her, but then her handle at the bottom of it, so it's like, wait, why'd you put the Taylor Rising at the bottom if you're gonna give it Taylor Rising at the top? So just that part of it, it's like I wouldn't have put her handle in there if anything, because it just makes it seem like it's a one-off kind of situation, and like her name may change later. But
Yeah.
I like more than anything that I love Jody's presentation of like her entrance and the energy that she had from the get go. It's like she's so hard hitting and vicious, like holy moly. Um, as Barry was saying, I was impressed with the Rising Impact needs to sign her. I think she did really well too, and like her and Jody, I feel like they both had a good showcasing to them. So I was really excited to see both of them on screen here. I can imagine Mel is probably excited to see Jody as well. So I had to tell her, but hopefully she watches it a little bit later. But yeah, it's just nice to see. I've been saying it for months now since we started this. Like, I'm glad they're adding new people to the roster. You know, we had Kylie and Kane joining, and then now Jody Threat. So it's exciting to see new people joining in the circle now for the Knockouts division, because I feel like they had lost more people versus what they gained. So it's nice to see those fresh faces, because it gives us those fresh feuds going up soon, hopefully. So I'm glad they're building her up the way they are right now, just to give her those kind of wins that make her look like a threat, literally. So I just want to see what her direction will be going forward after they gave her the first couple wins. So I would like to see who will like call her after that. And as Barry's saying, Jody reminds me of a little bit of Masha, which is not a bad thing. Yeah, I feel like she has that kind of vibe to her too, and I like her like wild child vibe. And she's so hard hitting. I love the way she was portrayed tonight to begin in Impact. So I'm excited to see what happens forward with her. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I saw Jody live actually at the last local show I went to here, where Masha was on the same card with her, and she actually teamed with our local talent Ava Lawless, who is going to be facing Masha Slamovich next week at the next show here. It isn't a bad thing that she's in a position like this. She's a fairly well-known talent on the indie scene. I believe at this point she's been around for quite a while. She's recognizable for anyone who's familiar with a lot of the indie scene, but you're like you said, it's nice to see Impact kind of fleshing out the roster a little bit and giving more people an opportunity here. And Taylor Rising has been on the local scene here in Edmonton recently as well. Lots of different, very talented women in the scene, and I'd love to see next week in Toronto more of that local talent starting to kind of get an opportunity. A lot of our local talent gets to, pop up here and there for one-off shots on an AEW or a WWE when they come through. But I think Impact is the place where a lot of these places or these people should have an opportunity to actually land and grow and advance their careers, right?
Yeah, and while the match was starting, we also have a part of like they show us Santino laid out backstage. There's not much to that part. They just show us that he's down and they're checking on him. I think one of the referees was, and I forgot who was because my stream got kind of blurry at that time, so I couldn't pinpoint who was there with him.
I think there was a couple refs and a couple backstage medical. I didn't recognize any of them specifically, but yeah. So we got that kind of right as this match was starting. We got that point of Santino being attacked. I do want to give a shout out to Jody for the finishing move that she has, because she calls it the F416, which 416 is the area code for Toronto. And it looks like a much sloppier F5 from what I could tell. After the match, we go backstage and get to check in on what happened to Santino with the attack. You've got Dango there upset. He's mad. He's blaming the design. Scott D'Amore rolls up to check on them. Dango is basically accusing the design of this is them saying they're going after authority figures. So Dango wants the design, and Scott's like, all of them? By yourself? that's like 4-on-1. And Dango's like, well, I got my best friend Joe Hendry, which Where was Joe Hendry? They said his name and he did not appear.
That's true. That's a good one. I didn't think about that.
But I think this segment was more about setting up Santino because after Dango mentions Hendry, Santino starts talking about having to stand up for himself, and he's approaching 50 years old, but he needs to do this for his son to show his son that he can still be strong and stand up. And they never really give us an announcement. They just kind of leave off that we're looking at the design versus Santino, Dango, and Hendry. And I was like, when is this happening? Tonight? Next week? Rebellion? Like, I wrote down in my notes, like, tonight, question mark?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this would have been a little bit more clear when that happened. Because I don't know. It just feels so awkward of like the way of like, we're not saying when, but it's happening. When do I watch out for this?
I do have a theory on this because later in the night we did announce that this match is happening at Rebellion. I have a gut feeling that we could see Dango turn in this match.
Interesting.
There was talk when Dango signed that he was going to be fulfilling a more serious role in Impact. That he was going to get to do something that he hadn't got to do for quite a while. That he was so used to being the funny, goofy comedy characters, but in Impact, signing this contract, he was going to get to play a little bit more of a serious role for himself. And we haven't got that yet. But I'm picturing and feeling that this is the situation where we could have Dango turn on Hendry and Santino and set himself up as a more serious position within the design, even if it is a matter of like they turn and take out Callahan as well, and Dango ends up being that fourth member. And then I feel like you could have Dango versus Joe Hendry as your next digital media feud.
Yeah, I want to say hi to Papa Smokes. Thank you for stopping by too. I also keep thinking no, because I didn't think about this at first. I don't know why I didn't. But like going back to what happened with the design earlier that night, I'm thinking of like they also mentioned of like having to like deal with the authority. And if you think about it from this aspect, it's like you have Santino and Dango there as the authority figures in the match in itself. So it could be not only that, but something happening with Santino as well in some shape or form. I'm not saying he's turning, but like something happening particularly to him here based on what they said with Callahan, because I don't see Callahan as a person that would kind of do something physically to Santino beforehand, but like maybe because of the step 5, he does move forward and tries to do something in this match to Santino there too.
Step 7.
Yeah.
No, I honestly think with D'Amore back and D'Amore being on screen again and being back in the picture, like as much as we love Santino, his role is kind of unnecessary. You don't need 2 authority positions. Director of authority and president and deputy dictator of authority, and lots of authority going on right now, that having a Dango turn and they eliminate Santino to take him off screen again and just leave Scott D'Amore as the only authority role. I think it feels right.
Yeah, I thought about this too when Scott returned. I kept thinking, so what's gonna happen with Santino now? Because once you have Scott returning, I don't see a point in having Santino and then Dango on top of it. Dango, it makes sense for him to like return to like having his regular matches and not being anything backstage in that sort of way. But with Santino, just felt like he hasn't wrestled, so I didn't think of him like in that wrestling standpoint. So I just kept thinking like as an authority figure, where does he go from here now that Scott is back? So maybe this is the direction going forward that leads us to this.
Yeah. Do you want to take us through the next part? Because the next part I feel like was very fun for you.
Yeah, I love Tasha. She's back. I'm so happy. No, I have been saying it since the moment that she left, and then she alluded of like having that time off. I hadn't seen her very active on Twitter, like especially like, promoting Impact. So I was kind of a little bit afraid of like that her contract had expired and she was leaving. I was hoping that wasn't the case, and I'm glad I was wrong. So it was nice to see her return and to get involved back in this action, especially back in picking things up with Savannah where she left off beforehand. So it's interesting having her here, just thinking back and reflecting. It was like, hey, I returned, like I'm focused, and this is it, and like trying to get rid of like my problems beforehand. And we have Giselle coming in here with Savannah and Jay. It's like, well, if you didn't get rid of me though, because I'm still standing in front of you. So she's like, I still want to get rid of you. She said, you can bring as many goons as you like, but I just want to, like, I want to face you, and I want to face, that kind of challenge. So it's interesting going back to where things picked up here. And not only that, but having her kind of like in a way save Deanna too. So she said it's like, oh, it's 3 versus 1. And she's like, are you sure you want to do that kind of? She's like, yeah, I see you. I see everybody behind you too. So it's like, like I'm not blind to that aspect. So I think it'll be interesting seeing somebody who else will join her in that aspect to go against Giselle and Savannah. So I'm interested to see how that plays out later. But it's nice to see Tasha being in the like face kind of role. I definitely missed her in like in the roster itself and the storylines. I feel like she was missing from there, and you could feel her presence being missing. So I'm very glad that she's back. How did you feel about it?
Honestly, it was a nice change of pace to have Tasha back.
Yeah.
Tasha's so good as the heel. She was so great as the Boricua Badass and the Fire and Flava and the champ with Savannah and just all of the different roles she played as a heel. It was nice to see her like kind of get this time off to refresh and renew herself a little bit and come back now. And I think we're all just so happy to see her back on our screens that it's just a very organic turn to people are willing to cheer for her because we're just happy to see her back.
Yeah.
Giselle trying to say that Savannah dumped Tasha, and Tasha's like, no, I dumped her, and then I came back to try and sweep her under. It was just a nice kind of piece of, who dumped who kind of setup. And I think Tasha versus Savannah probably has to happen at some point here. I think Tasha versus Giselle is kind of the setup for that. But I would not be surprised to see Tasha right back in the Knockouts World title picture sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And Barry here going, I wondered if Jody might join Tasha as she would counter to Evans. I think that would be an interesting person to have in your corner and go against, have like the power and the height to it, and that they have that they're very similar in that aspect. I think it would be a good way to like kind of introduce Jody to like the storyline in itself, and like building relationships with the knockouts in that aspect of the storylines, of like drawing that line there of like, oh, she's a face, she's building a relationship now with Tasha, and then having gone against Giselle and Savannah. So I feel like that would be a good way to like build her up aside from like her victories to start with.
An interesting option for sure. I don't know how you'd get there. I wonder more if we're going to see somebody like a one-off appearance in Toronto show up to kind of help her out, or if it's something where just Tasha runs through all of them as the baby face. She doesn't need help. She just starts rolling through Giselle and Savannah and Jay, and takes out all three of them one by one, moves on from it.
Yeah, I'm ready to see either way. I'm happy that she's back.
Yeah. We move from that back to the ring for another match for the day. We have the good hands of Skyler and Hotch with Bully Ray taking on the team of Tommy Dreamer, Yuya Uemura, and 4-time Detroit Red Wings Stanley Cup champion Darren McCarthy making his Impact Wrestling in-ring debut. I messaged this to you as this match was going on, Astrid. We've talked a little bit about Impact being the open door. You can't even call it the forbidden door anymore. It's just the open door of the wrestling world. And listed it all off that we've seen over the years through Impact Wrestling. We've seen them have working relationships through WWE, AEW, MLW, NWA, NJPW, Bellator Fight Nights, the NFL, and now we have an NHL hockey player coming into an Impact Wrestling ring. Where do we go next from here? And how awesome is it to just, the Impact door is open to anybody that wants to come and wrestle there?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when a lot of people think of Forbidden Door, they always think of like those moments between like AEW, and Ring of Honor in New Japan. I feel like a lot of people don't even talk about like Mickey James being in the Royal Rumble, which to me is probably one of the biggest ones because not only is it a woman doing it, but we never had a champion from another company be in WWE like this and show up and still have the name of the company being named out there. Um, so I think it's interesting seeing this aspect of Impact. People don't think about how Impact does so many relationships, and I like how they do it so well because it's one of those things like it keeps happening, and the person might leave now, but they might come back later and pick up on what happened there. So it's interesting seeing those kind of relationships being built and Impact being at the center of it all. Because of all the companies, you never think of Impact being the center of this. Like you would think maybe at WWE and AEW, like that's a lot popular. But I enjoy seeing Impact as the big center of, like, as I said, I call it Forbidden Door, but it feels like a sliding door at this point. Maybe I don't know what to call it, but it's not forbidden anymore. That's for
It's
sure.
just an open door. They've got a full-blown open door policy. You knock and walk in.
Yeah, sounds easy.
The match itself played out pretty fun. Obviously, McCarthy as kind of the newbie and just there for the spot, mostly hung out on the ringside area, and it ended up being Dreamer and Yuya getting beaten down fairly good by Hotch, Skyler, and Bully for a large portion of this match. Ultimately, when McCarthy does get in, he has a brief moment of taking out Hotch and Skyler, and then a stare down with Bully before he gets jumped from behind. With a little bit of help from Dreamer and Yuya, though, Darren McCarthy ends up getting the pin. I believe it was on John Skyler. And then all hell broke loose. And I think this is where we set up who Team Dreamer and Team Bully are now.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give us any confirmation at the end of the night, so I'm just going to do it right now because the end of the night promo, they just told us Team Bully and Team Dreamer. But when McCarthy gets the pin on Skyler, we have Kenny King makes his presence felt by coming in and attacking Darren McCarthy. Yep. And then Frankie Kazarian comes and attacks Kenny King. And then I don't even remember how or why either of the ladies ended up in there, but somehow Killer Kelly and Masha Slamovich both ended up in the ring as well. So I think we're looking that we're going to have Dreamer, Uemura, Kazarian, Killer
Kelly, yeah,
and maybe Darren McCarthy.
That one's like
or is the fifth spot on Team Dreamer still open? And then on Team Bully, we've got Bully, Hotch, Skyler, Kenny King, and Masha Slamovich.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, yeah. I mean, I haven't really cared. Neither of us has really cared about this Bully and Dreamer feud. It's just kind of been there. It's been happening. We acknowledge it. We talk about it. But the way this match just built out now and included all of these guys, like, sure, it's guys who just don't have anything going for them. Yeah. But guys and girls, I should include both because Masha and Killer Kelly are both looking like they're going to be in it. But putting Kenny King, Kazarian, Kelly, and Masha in this match just turned it from a snooze fest into a match that I'm actually interested to see how it plays out.
Don't say that too loud. They're going to hear you. I just feel like every time I think I'm done with this, something else happens. Because I was done with this after the Busted Open stuff. And then they're like, no, Team Bully and Team Dream. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Why? I'm like, who asked for this? It was not me. It's like, did you ask for it? Because I didn't. But just like I feel like the end of itself was like such a hot mess. Masha came in there out of nowhere, but I like how they pointed out in commentaries, like, oh, she's been kind of like in a, I want to say kind of like a business relationship in a way with Bully. So they made it seem as like, oh, she's here to like help Bully in that sense of it. And then Killer Kelly was just the answer to her. I was like, okay, I like the girls being involved in here. So I don't mind that. But just,
if this leads to us getting a Killer Kelly versus Masha Slamovich one-on-one, I'm all in.
Yeah. I like Mary's question. I was thinking myself the same thing when they said it. Did they explain what the advantages in this match if they're fighting for next week? I wonder if, I don't know, because I wonder if the match is going to be kind of like I don't want to call like this, but not a Blood and Guts. I forgot the NXT WWE version of it.
Like the War Games?
War Games. Yeah, I was thinking if it's like type of War Games of like whoever wins the match next week gets advantage of like they come out first, but they haven't explained the format of the match in itself, so I'm not sure really.
They just keep calling it a hardcore war.
I'm gonna check the website, but it just they keep saying, I know the graphic in itself said, "Oh, the winner gets advantage for their team," but they haven't said what the advantage really is or what the match really is built like. To be honest, so I'm not sure. Let's see if
So
on the
there was a
preview.
hardcore war before between Team Angle and Team Young, where each man can bring a weapon of their choice to use during the match.
I do not remember that. What the I I don't know what to think about this right now. Yeah, I don't know. I was
Yeah.
thinking the same thing though. So I'm not entirely sure what that quote unquote advantage would be or how it'll like play out in this match. I had the same
Like I
question too, so
said,
I'm glad you asked.
if this match ends up giving me a one-on-one between Kelly and Masha, I don't care about anything else. I'm all in on that match.
Yeah.
We move on from Bully and Dreamer because I wish Impact would do the same. We get a quick walking weapon video just recapping his reign as champion and where he's been and who he's fought. And then we get a Deanna promo that I almost fast forwarded through because I thought it was a commercial.
No. Yeah. No, I particularly love this one because I've been saying it for like a few weeks now because I feel like ever since Diana has lost all her titles, she's been like in the back burner in a way. And then the way they set up this with Giselle, I wasn't a fan of it in the aspect of like I'm thinking like Diana could do so much more than what she's doing, and I wanted more for her, being that she was, former Reina de Reinas champion, former Nagas champion, former Nagas tag team champion. And I had to go back and like watch the clip on Twitter because I wanted to write down what she said. And she said, the last 18 months have been a roller coaster. I went from being a 4-time world champion and tag team champion with my best friend to having nothing. And for some people, having nothing is a bad thing. But for the virtuosa, having nothing is a blank canvas for which upon I create. And I love what like this part too that made me think of like her, how she started. I kept thinking of like she started at Impact like right away doing great things, and all of a sudden it just went to this. And I'm glad she mentioned it here because she also said, when I came to Impact Wrestling, I had a blank canvas, and on the canvas I built the Age of Virtuosa. And I like also how she built up on the match in itself, like this, like Jordan hasn't defeated me like the Virtuosa, and Diana hasn't defeated Miki, but like this match and this time, this is to create a new and better age for the Virtuosa. And I love having that part of it because I know we haven't seen much of Jordan like in the promotion of this match, and then obviously Mickey James is still a question mark. So it's nice to see Diana. I feel like she's been building up for this match by herself, it almost feels like. But I like seeing this aspect of her of like, this is like a clean reset for me. And it just like sold me so much on the match because I keep thinking I want her to win this, because I want her to go back to being showcased the way she was at first when she like arrived in Impact Wrestling. So it's like I'm just hoping that she wins it after like listening and watching this promo all over again.
Yeah, you basically laid out everything that I had to say about it too. The part about starting with nothing, then had everything, then lost everything, and other people may have felt like this was everything crashing down, but for her, it's just a blank canvas to restart her story ultimately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like Impact went all in on the Jordan and Mickey stuff, and now with Mickey getting injured and potentially having to pull out, it's kind of put a wrench in the plans the same way that the Josh Alexander injury did, that they have to swerve and sidestep. And luckily Deanna's been in this position with the Giselle feud where she's really been a focal piece and she's been in a top story for long enough now that it was an easy enough sidestep to put her in it. But there isn't a ton of story build from Jordan's perspective, at least, to try and utilize this. So they're kind of stuck in a position where they have to use a lot of backstage storytelling to frame this story that maybe wasn't the plan when this got taped the weekend of Sacrifice.
I also like how they include the footage from Multiverse United as this was going on to like give us the insight of how Diana won her title shot, for the people that had missed it. So it's nice to see them bringing in that connection of like she won this match, hence now she's going against Jordan and then maybe against Mickey. And I like how later on, even as they're giving us the card that they have so far for Rebellion, they put all three of them, but they put kind of Mickey James that like, if she's clear to return. So I think either way, it's an interesting match if you think about it, whether it's 1-on-1 or triple threat. I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to it. I just want Diana to be victorious after this.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like Deanna was the one who probably was being set up to be a future challenger for Jordan, and now they've had to rush this, and I don't know if the timeline is right for her to be the one to take the title. Or for Mickey, maybe not even for Jordan, maybe it was for Mickey, but I don't know if right now is the moment for her to have that belt. And it's hard to say with Mickey's health being up in the air on where we're headed on this. We won't know until next Thursday what is happening with this match. So it's so hard to predict and tell what is going to end up coming out of it.
Yeah.
We have Eddie Edwards versus PCO up next. Pretty standard brawl. We've seen these two, going at it enough now that I feel like I'm ready for this to be over because it feels like they're running out of new stuff to do. PCO in this feud just feels stale. Every time he screams out, I'm just like, okay, stop, go away. Which is sad because PCO has skills for sure, and he's been doing this long enough that he has the ability to do a lot. I'm getting bored of it. How are you feeling on it?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I just kept thinking, how many times are we going to see this? Because I feel like at this point, it feels like I've seen it a gazillion times and I don't want to see it anymore. So I'm just hoping, and I was hoping when the match started that this would be the end of it, more than anything. And then by the end of the match, I kept thinking, great, that's something else is happening. And now, I did like at the fact of like having that moment when the ref was down. We have Alicia coming out, PCO's setting up for the PCO assault, and she's like begging him to not do anything to Eddie. And it feels nice to like see her back involved in this somehow. Just that's the only thing I was glad about, because I know that we had little bits and pieces of her, like, and her and Eddie telling her, was like, I want this to be over. And she's like, oh, I want you to go back to what you were before, and those little bits and pieces. But we see her like every so often. So
Yeah.
I definitely missed seeing her. So I'm glad she's involved in this just because I get to see her now. Um, so just like after she's begging him and he's still gonna setting up for a PCO, so she takes a candlestick and she hits him, um, which helps out in the end for Eddie to win it. And I like the how even after the match, like PCO trying to get up, and like he's like trying to like 3 times before he actually does. And I love that aspect of like them running away from him the way they did. And it just goes back to like telling us that, that answer of like she was probably the one in the car that drove off to what happened PCO beforehand. But I think adding her, it makes me feel a little bit better about the storyline. But at the same time, I want it to be over. So it's like I feel like I'm like torn about it.
We've had Eddie bury PCO in the desert. We've had him hit him with a car. We had Eddie and Kenny King beat him down with chairs and stairs and completely demolish and leave him laying in the ring. And now we have him tonight with Alicia with a kendo stick and a Boston knee party. How many times does Eddie Edwards have to put down PCO before we can finally move on from this?
How did he get arrested for burying him alive and just literally killing him almost at this point? Well, I guess you can't kill PCO. Maybe that's why. But yeah, I'm just torn about this thing, to be honest, because I like having her in there because I feel like it's a little bit different. We haven't had her be involved in quite a bit. But at the same time, it's like, I want this and the Bully Ray Tommy Dreamer thing to be over at this point. I feel like it's been long enough.
Yeah, Eddie needs to be able to move on from this. Eddie is capable of so much more. And there's plenty of places you could have an Eddie Edwards other than just continually running away from the man that chases him with the scars and the lightning bolts. Like, at this point, I'm wondering if PCO is supposed to be more Undertaker or Kane.
Yeah. Very. Oh my gosh. Alicia Edwards is just terrible at everything. She's been around for years and has seen zero improvement, sadly. I like having her involved in it here because I feel like it's nice to see the ladies being involved in the guy stuff. And it has made sense to me, like having the wife like trying to protect her husband, and we haven't had that aspect of them. She's been kind of like in a way telling him to just end it and that's it. So she hasn't been by his side like this. But at the same time, I don't know if that's enough to like keep me going with the storyline.
Yeah. I'm going to bring it up because I know you probably took note of it already anyhow. This was another show where we've ended up with no women's matches taking place,
Yeah.
which seems to be almost every other week at this point.
Oh
We get a lot of women
no,
on
wait,
one
we had
show.
Jody and Taylor.
Oh yeah, we had the one Jody match. That's right, the short
Yeah.
Jody squash match.
Yeah, it just felt really. It was too short though.
But we did have a lot of women's story building here. And we had women appearances. So we had Alicia in this match. We had Masha and Kelly show up in the Dreamer and Bully stuff. We had a Deanna promo. We had a Tasha promo with Giselle involved. We still had a lot of women's stuff going on this show. How did you feel about the women's representation on this show in that sense?
I feel like it reminds you a lot of like NXT and why I love NXT because it has more than one storyline and it doesn't have to be all around the title either, which is what I like about it the most. I know like you said, we have that part of Giselle and Tasha and Savannah, for example, doesn't involve a title. Alicia involved in this, there's not a title involved in here either. And having Jody and Taylor, there's no title either, and it's a debut there as well. Um, and like having Killer Kelly and Masha earlier too, it's nice to see the girls being involved in the guy stuff. I like when that happens too. I feel like it's a way to like highlight the woman in a different way. Again, no title involved in there either. The other thing was like we didn't get much about the women's tag titles, so it feels awkward in that sense of like Taya's gone, so what do we do now? And so I think that's the only thing that feels like it's kind of limbo in a way. But it's just like the match in itself. I get why you felt like there was no women's matches, and I had to think about it for a moment too because I felt almost the same way. But it just the moment of like I think for me and NXT had done sometimes, but not all the time. But when you have a match like Jody and Taylor that was short in that sense, then I would try to include a second match that's a little bit longer to kind of balance that out. But I'm glad that even with having a short match, we still have a lot of storytelling happening all at the same time in all different directions and different things going on at the same time too. So it's nice to see that. And it's also thinking like this is an impact episode that we had no Jordan to build up their match and no Mickey James to build this up either. So it's interesting to think about like we didn't get their aspect on the storyline. We just had Diana, and that was already like a good segment, just her by herself doing this promo.
And no
But yeah,
Coven
overall,
and no Death Dolls either.
no, that's what I'm saying. It's like it feels like it's in limbo right now because I don't know what's happening there. Um, Barry saying having 20 minutes with Josh at the end that didn't help. I think the only time I will kind of I don't want to say it this way, but the only way I would excuse having the Josh stuff is like this is Josh relinquishing the title. So that's the first thing. He's the longest reigning Impact champion. So you wanna celebrate him in that type of way at the same time, while also building off of like Macklin and Kushida because we get the announcement, but there was no build up to that. So I understand having those like this one having 20 minutes to it dedicated to it. I just didn't think that should have really been the main event, but I don't know what would have been the main event for me though. But it just makes sense having this as like the end to it.
I feel like it was a nice way to wrap it. We'll get into it in a moment here after I run down the next coming weeks, but it felt like it needed to happen just for all of what Josh Alexander has done for and meant for Impact Wrestling. It was just something that felt necessary to acknowledge what he's accomplished and what he's been for the last year, since they won't actually get to have that proper ending to his title reign, and they don't know, like they said, his injury is going to keep him out indefinitely. They don't know recovery time. They haven't announced recovery time. So when he does come back, it's going to be very special because they've now set us up open-ended that we have no idea when to expect his recovery.
Yeah, and I think about it from this aspect, like you said, we had to like not only celebrate him for having such a long reign and representing Impact the way he did, but being the longest reigning Impact champion. It feels like it's a great way to highlight Josh while he's away. We are building Macklin and Kushida there, but also building up Josh versus whoever is the champion when he returns as well, because you leave that open ended in that aspect. So it did make sense, like all this happening at the same time while also having Scott there as like initiating this and I don't want to say like keeping things in a certain way because he was involved in it as well, but I feel like it made sense to like have him involved with the Josh situation as well there. He's losing his world champion, but it's somebody he's been defending as his world champion this whole time, and the build up to Macklin in there too. So all of this, it made sense that it happened the way it happened. It's unfortunate that it took a lot of time.
Yeah. For next week, we did set up that it's going to be a fairly knockouts heavy show by the sounds of it. So we have Giselle Shaw versus Tasha Steeles. We have Taylor Wilde versus Jessica. We have Callahan and Angels taking on Dango and Hendry. We have Kenny King versus Kazarian in the match for the advantage that we don't know what that advantage is. And we have the official update from Mickie James on where she stands going into Rebellion and if this match is going to happen with or without her.
Mm-hmm.
We get the layout for Rebellion as it stands right now, where the Coven will defend their newly won Knockouts Tag Team Championships against the Death Dolls of Rosemary and Havoc, or Jessica, not Havoc necessarily. Mm-hmm. We have the triple threat elimination match for the X Division title between Trey Miguel, Jonathan Gresham.
Yeah, Gresham.
And Speedball Mike Bailey. We have The Design versus Joe Hendry, Santino, and Dirty Dango. We have Team Bully versus Team Dreamer in a hardcore war match. We have the Bullet Club of Ace Austin and Chris Bay taking on the Motor City Machine Guns of Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley in an Ultimate X match for the Tag Team Championships. We have the Knockouts World Title match between Deonna Purrazzo, Jordan Grace, and potentially Mickie James. And then we have the Impact World Championship match between Steve Macklin and Kushida. Shaping up to be a hell of a Rebellion.
Yeah. It's crazy to think I looked at it today because I knew it was a Sunday, but I forgot what Sunday it fell on. And then seeing it's like the 16th, it's like we're only 10 days away from this. So it's incredible to think like the card they have built up like this so far.
Yeah. And the fact that they've done it all like built towards it while still running Sacrifice and Multiverse United in back-to-back weeks. Yeah. That we're getting 3 top-tier Impact Wrestling pay-per-view quality shows in 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We run Sacrifice, we run Multiverse, we have this week of Impact Wrestling, and then next week's Impact Wrestling that leads right into Rebellion that weekend. Mm-hmm. So a ton of top-tier quality wrestling here from Impact. It's a fun time to be a wrestling fan because a lot of places are doing a lot of fun things right now. And then we get into the sad part as we end this show with Josh Alexander relinquishing his title. We come back from commercial to Scott D'Amore and Kushida in the ring as Macklin is making his way out. An extra loud "You tapped out" chant for Macklin. This crowd in Windsor seemed to be 110% behind Kushida all the way. Josh makes his way down, enters with Jade and Jet in tow. Jet looks extremely upset here. And I don't know if that's just their son is a very talented, entertainer on his own, but
yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, Barry, I was excited to see Impact coming in London finally. So finally, Sally turned out to be London, Ontario.
You just need to take a trip across the pond, Barry.
Yeah.
Josh gets on the mic once they're all in the ring, and he gives a fairly heartfelt speech about, in Windsor, where he signed his contract 4 years ago, working his way up, the X Division champion, the world champion, becoming the face of the company, Scott having his back, having to fight through all the adversity. He wanted to, there was no way he was losing the title to Bully or Rich, that he needed to get back to Windsor and to Toronto where it all started for him. His 14 years on the Indies, having to bust his ass, and every time he saw somebody working hard, he had to work harder. Finally gets to the bit where he's about to hand over the title to Scott, and Jet runs up and grabs the title from his dad and runs back to his mom. And I was hoping there was more to this than that, or they were going to not take the title belt back from the child. Ultimately, they do. Josh hands it over to Scott, and then Macklin gets on the mic and starts talking about how they might as well just hand him the title belt. That he's done it all. He's beaten everybody. That Kushida was just a road bump on Josh's way to Macklin. That Kushida is lucky to even be in this match. And then starts going at Josh. And I'm really glad Scott kind of put a stop to this before they let it
Mhm.
get too deep in, because in that moment where Jet already seemed so upset about his dad
Yeah.
having to give away his title belt, Macklin going at Jet and talking about his dad being a coward and not like using the injury to not want to defend the championship felt like it was a tad far, and really, really glad that Scott called him out and put a stop to that right quick.
Yeah, I like having that aspect of like having Chet in there. I feel like it adds another like emotional aspect to it because not only is he the world champion to him, but it's also his dad and his hero. So seeing not only that, but seeing him and like all the glory that comes with being champion and the way he was being highlighted, I love that way. Like him taking the championship is just like, this is ours. It's not just my dad's, but it's like my family's kind of thing. So I love seeing that. I also love having Scott in there come in. It just gives us what we've been saying. Scott is like that father figure to this family. So it's nice to see him going and defending Josh and going and telling Steve, don't say anymore. Like basically they're already suffering enough with this as it is. So don't. And then the way he keeps going at Jet, I feel like I said, I like the aspect though that it gives you like open ended in that aspect because we're talking about. Kushida's move is the one that put Josh on the shelf, so you have that aspect of it, but you also have that aspect of like Steve basically attacking the family. So I feel like it adds that moment of in the future, if he goes against either one of them, there's something to start the storyline there when he returns. So that's what I liked about that aspect of it. But I feel like more than anything, I was glad they had Steve do this too because it added him more as a heel than before. Because I feel like I know he's a heel, but at the same time, he wasn't acting very heelish to me. So I feel like this was something that he needed to do to get kind of that heel reaction that he needed. And like you said, having the reaction from the crowd already cheering for Kushida, it was nice to see like both of them get the reactions they needed to build up for the characters too. Um, oh my gosh, Barry! I wonder if Gresham saw the kid with the belt and finally a champion that's shorter than me. Ay, ay, ay.
Oh, so bad. So bad. The other piece I really enjoyed here was at the end when Scott was going at Macklin though, and
Mhm.
says, we already know Kushida could beat you because he made you tap out 2 weeks ago. And I loved how they brought this up because they'd been talking about Kushida's hoverboard lock injuring Josh, and they'd been talking about Kushida having made Macklin tap out. And Macklin takes and turns this the other way, which I'm always appreciative when the heel can find a way to justify their actions in a way that doesn't make them look like a coward. Where he says, I tapped because it was a meaningless match. There was no titles. There was nothing of importance. My mission is the title. And there was no harm in me tapping in a meaningless tag match instead of just laying there in the submission and getting hurt like Josh.
Yeah.
It protects him ultimately because I can agree with his actions. I'm like, yeah, there was no harm in him tapping out in that 6-man match. He wasn't friends with Swan and Kaz. He had no reason to try and put himself through pain for his team. He was just there for the match. He can tap out and move on and look ahead to his title match at Rebellion. And we get a brawl between Macklin and Kushida after this where Macklin tries to grab the title and run away. Kushida topes over the top, takes him out, grabs the title, comes back and imposes as we go to credits. Reverse momentum theory says Kushida's not winning the
title. That's true. But I love more than anything having Macklin had that attitude, and even that I love the part of like Scott bringing it up and it's like, you're this and that, but also it's like if you think about it from this way, Josh did an open challenge and who answered it? Speedball. Like it wasn't you. Like you had the opportunity, and it's like and pointed out to him that he's had chances to go after the title, but it's like but you never answer them. So it's interesting
but we
seeing
already
that
had
brought up
Macklin
later.
justify that recently where he said,
Yeah.
I could have, you're
Mhm.
right, but I'm afraid of losing. And I was waiting for my perfect moment where I could beat you. And I had everything scouted and I was fully prepared and I want to beat you in your hometown. So Scott going at him like that didn't hit quite as hard given that Macklin had
Mhm.
already justified his reasons for not taking those opportunities.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he brought it up even after we got the answer to that beforehand. And as Barry's saying, Kushida was great during the segment, outacting them all without saying a word, just pulling faces and hand gestures. I love Kushida to win, though I know he won't. Yeah, I feel like it's something like I wouldn't mind seeing Kushida win, but I feel like this is definitely built up for Steve, and it's been building off that way. It sucks in that way that it's not the way I was hoping it would be, because I feel like having Steve win, more than anything against Josh in Canada, I feel like the reaction as like he would have gotten would have been humongous. I know he'll get that reaction either way with Kushida, but it won't have the same meaning because it would have been in Josh's you know home more than anything. So I feel like that's the only thing that changes for me. But I feel like this segment alone already gave me enough for me to want this match already. Not only want and Steve and Kushida, but whoever is going against Josh in the later on whenever he returns to. So it's like I feel like it was great in that sort of way for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the show. I felt like it was a really strong build. Lots of things that came out of this going towards Rebellion. Lots of big matches announced. Lots of different kind of reveals and setups put in place. As we do every week, except when I forget to try and do it. Your impact maker for this week, Astrid.
I'm gonna go with Jody because I love that she not only debuted, especially so quickly after having her video package. Usually, I feel like I'm used to getting weeks of video packages before the person debuts, so it's nice to see her being like this. I feel like her presentation was exactly what I was hoping for. I'm excited for her addition to the Knockouts division and what she will bring to the table, how she will get involved in the future. So I'm glad there's something new to it, something fresh for the Knockouts division, which is something that we needed going forward. And like Barry was saying earlier, it's like Taylor also did a great job. So you never know, something will come out of it for Taylor later on as well. But overall, I'm glad for Jody debuting tonight. Um, how about you? I don't know what you mean, Tommy Dreamer. I don't know. No, not for me.
I'm giving mine to the one that it probably would have been for Sacrifice. If we had actually done a recap or reaction for Sacrifice, it has to be the returning Boricua Badass. Tasha Steeles, just in that quick backstage segment, made me realize just how much we'd missed having her. That breath of life she presented, that attitude, that demeanor, that the charisma and the ability to carry that interview, even with Giselle in there, who Giselle is not necessarily any slouched when it comes to being able to talk the talk. Just Tasha was levels above her. Tasha is a welcome, very welcome addition back into this roster, and will be a nice kickstart to this Knockouts division for the next little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad this is a very strong episode to Impact, and I feel like it was a great build up for Rebellion too. So overall, very happy about this episode.
Yeah, we only get 2 episodes to build towards Rebellion coming out of Multiverse and Sacrifice. So they have to go hard, they have to go fast, and I feel like next week will be more of the same, just in terms of putting that pedal to the floor to get to Rebellion and what should be a massive show in Toronto.
Yeah. I'm excited for you.
That's it. For myself, you can find me on the Twitter at Cody Defoe right there. Hit me with the tweets. I'll add and follow back if I don't already. I am here typically Thursday nights in this exact same time slot, talking Impact with the Natural beside me, or OLED when Natural decides to take some time away. Next week, I am still undecided. I am most likely going to miss next week's episode as I head out to some local indie wrestling here at home before hopping a flight and getting down to see Rebellion live. But Astrid will be here for sure. If I don't make it out to the indies here at home, I will be on the stream with Astrid next week. Otherwise, I'll be back the week after Rebellion to talk all about my experience at the live show with Rebellion and the Rebellion Fallout shows. Astrid, where can we find you?
You can find me mostly on my Twitter. It's like my name, Astrid Pizarro. My Instagram is Astrid Pizarro 20. You can find me starting next week again on Tuesday, taking over with Ed or OLE, talking about the Fallout to Stand and Deliver once again, and the build up to what's coming up next, especially because he gets to watch NXT live. So I guess I'm the only one missing a live show sometime soon. But again, going back on Thursday, here with you, if you're here, obviously. But yeah, it'll be nice to like hear the week after your reaction and how it was watching Rebellion live. So I'm excited, but also jealous at the same time for you. But yeah, other than that, you can find me on my Twitter. I will have my NXT review and Women's Wrestling Talk on their website. And if you haven't yet, like I said earlier, if you go to my YouTube channel, subscribe, you can also see the multiverse watch along we did with Melball and Andre. It was a nice Backbreaker Media crossover for us. It was really fun to have everybody on screen at once too, and doing a watch along. We don't get to do that here, so it's nice to do that. And everything I did last week with WrestleMania Week, it's up on the channel as well. And if I did it correctly, hopefully I did. There's ads running on Twitch as well. So if you want to like miss on the ads and I have them on, make sure you actually subscribe to the channel as well, so that way you'll get an ad-free show. Don't forget about that. I did find though to rate tonight, there's another Impact show going on at the same time, so I figured I will keep it within the Impact family at this point. It's called Total Nonstop Impact, so I figured I will kind of rate them on, and as we're talking about Impact tonight. But more than anything, I want to thank everybody for being in the chat and spending your night with us, especially Barry, who's always here every single week. We appreciate you a lot more than you think. So it's nice to talk about Impact. So it's definitely a great night it's a great way to end the night for me, at least, with Impact. But yeah, thank you, everybody. Do you have anything else to say, Cody?
No, I just wanted, Papa Smokes, Mel, Bobby, Ed, our friends, always welcome and thankful for you guys to be popping in as well. Barry, you're much loved, always being in the chats with us. We love talking Impact with you. And everybody else, if you're lurking, you're watching silently, we'd love to see you in the comments joining the chat, but we're just happy you're joining us. If you're watching after the fact on the Backbreaker Media replay on Mondays, we're always here Thursday nights, half an hour after Impact finishes, to talk the show on the live show here. If you ever want to drop in or just continue to watch on the Mondays, we'd love to see you in the comments there on the YouTube as well.
Yeah, well, thank you, everybody, and have a good night.